All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. We're skipping the usual long intro today because, honestly, we're looking at an immediate, literal choking crisis right now. It's unfolding in one of the most historic, incredibly beautiful places on Earth, the Kathmandu Valley. Today, we're breaking down the exact mechanics of this massive environmental and public health emergency, and it's driven almost entirely by vehicle smog.
Get a load of this number: 8 times. In recent years, Kathmandu's concentration of PM2.5, those microscopic, deeply harmful particles that just wreck your lungs, has hit 8 times the World Health Organization's annual air quality guideline. 8 times. This isn't just a mildly hazy day. We are talking about a level of toxic air that is actively, literally shaving years off the life expectancy of the average resident living there.
So, you really have to wonder, how did we get here? Why is Kathmandu, a valley historically famous for crisp, pure Himalayan air, absolutely choking on its own traffic? What turns this stunning geographical basing into a toxic trap that literally leaves people gasping for breath? To get it, we really need to look at this massive collision between local geography and rapid human expansion.
All right, part 1, the toxic bowl effect. Let's look at what happens when unique geography meets totally unchecked urban growth.
So think about the concept of thermal inversion. Geographically, Kathmandu is literally shaped like a giant bowl, right? It's completely surrounded by these high hills. Well, during the winter months, this crazy meteorological phenomenon kicks in. A layer of warm air settles in and acts like a heavy, invisible blanket right over the valley. It traps the cold air underneath it, and along with that cold air, it traps every single ounce of vehicle exhaust, soot, and dust. Basically, nature puts a tight lid on the bowl and the pollution just can't blow away.
And what's filling up that trapped space under the lid? Well, 12%. That is the explosive annual growth rate of registered vehicles in the Bagmati zone, which covers most of the Kathmandu Valley. Think about that for a second. Every single year, 12% more vehicles are pouring into this closed, bowl-shaped system. It's pushing the valley's carrying capacity to the absolute breaking point. It's totally unsustainable.
Moving on to part 2, anatomy of the smog. Let's actually dissect the main culprits generating all this trapped smoke.
A recent emission mapping study shows us exactly where a massive chunk of this problem is coming from. Are you ready for this? A staggering 63% of PM10 particulate pollution comes directly from two-wheelers. 63%! Because the traffic congestion is so bad and everyone just wants to get from A to B quickly, motorcycles have absolutely flooded the streets. And collectively, they've become the absolute biggest contributor to PM10 emissions in the entire valley.
And it points to this really profound systemic imbalance on the roads. On one hand, you have an overwhelming volume of private vehicles, with two-wheelers alone making up 78% of all registered vehicles. On the other hand, public transport makes up just a tiny 3% of the vehicle fleet. And, to make matters worse, it's highly unorganized. So what happens? Even more people are forced to buy private vehicles, which just feeds this vicious, endless cycle of congestion and exhaust.
But wait, here's where the data gets incredibly skewed. Let's talk about what researchers call diesel superemitters. Heavy trucks represent a tiny fraction, merely 2.3% of the total vehicles on the road. Yet, because they run on diesel, and frankly are rarely maintained properly, they are responsible for a jaw-dropping 80% of the highly dangerous PM2.5 and NOx emissions. 80%! In fact, studies show over a third of these specific vehicles are spitting visible, thick black smoke straight into the air.
Which brings us to the totally frustrating, almost absurd irony of the green sticker paradox. As one local official pointed out, slapping an official green emission sticker on a vehicle doesn't actually mean it's clean. People are just tuning up their cars right before the annual test just to pass it. Then, they let them deteriorate and spew black smoke for the other 364 days of the year. The system is completely being gamed, and the air quality is paying the ultimate price.
Okay, part 3. Health frontlines. Let's talk about what it actually means for a human being to breathe in this dust day in and day out. Nowhere is this toll more heartbreakingly visible than with Kathmandu's traffic police. Imagine standing right in the middle of this toxic bowl for hours on end. The statistics are just grim. Up to 50 officers fall ill every single day from the dust. A massive 80% suffer from chronic respiratory issues, coughs, runny noses, just struggling to breathe. Over half are dealing with skin allergies, and nearly half have eye problems. It's a severe daily occupational hazard.
And if we zoom into a microscopic level, there's actually this fascinating, albeit sad, parallel between us and the environment.
In humans, PM2.5 particles are so tiny they just bypass our body's natural defenses and completely clog our alveoli. Those are the tiny air sacs in our lungs. This leads to chronic diseases like COPD. Well, in a remarkably similar way, thick layers of vehicle soot settle on plant leaves and choke their stomata. It literally blocks out the sunlight and severely limits their ability to photosynthesize. So humans and plants, we are literally both suffocating together.
Which perfectly leads us to part 4, nature's warning signs, and the devastating ecological toll this is taking.
To measure this toll, scientists look at things called bioindicators. Think of these as nature's own built-in air quality sensors. By just observing how certain sensitive plants and organisms are faring in different parts of the valley, we can read the exact health of the surrounding ecosystem. And we can do it without even needing a single fancy electronic monitor. The stark reality of Kathmandu's air is written directly on its trees. Lichens, for example, are fantastic bioindicators because they pull all their nutrients directly from the air. Down in the lower, urban altitudes that are just choked by vehicle exhaust, lichens have been almost completely wiped out. We're talking a dismal air quality index score of just 1.5. But if you travel up to higher altitudes, like Fulchaki Hill, which sits above that thermal inversion lid we talked about earlier, the lichens survive and thrive. Up there, the cleaner air scores up to 12.5. So nature is basically drawing us a very clear, undeniable map of the pollution.
We're seeing the exact same story play out with roadside trees. Research mapping the air pollution tolerance index of local flora shows that sensitive species, like the amala tree, are just severely damaged by the constant barrage of vehicle smoke. However, you have these tolerant species, like camphor and ficus trees, that are surprisingly resilient. They don't just survive, they actually act as vital green barriers, physically capturing some of the dust and particulate matter before it can reach pedestrians on the sidewalk.
Finally, part 5, clearing the bowl. Let's look at the actual crackdowns and clean solutions being deployed right now to fix this.
So the Kathmandu Metropolitan City, or KMC, is stepping up with a really targeted pollution action plan. First off, they are bypassing that totally flawed green sticker system by deploying portable smoke meters for random, on-the-spot roadside testing. If you're caught emitting black smoke, bam, immediate fines. Looking longer term, new policy frameworks are heavily pushing for electric vehicles and way stricter Euro 6 emission standards. And crucially, there's a massive push to reorganize the chaotic public transit system and prioritize infrastructure for walking and cycling. The goal is to replace those massive volumes of private two-wheelers with sustainable options.
Which leaves us with this ultimate question. The data is clear, the human and ecological tolls are totally undeniable, and the solutions are literally sitting right there on the table. Will Kathmandu actually enforce these strict crackdowns, adopt clean transit, and finally lift the lid off its pollution? Or will rapid urbanization just outpace the regulations, allowing this toxic bowl to keep filling up? It's a literal race against time for the lungs of the valley. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and remember, keep questioning the air you breathe.